Lowe's knows that free is just better. That's why MyLowe's Rewards is free to join. As a member, you earn points towards MyLowe's money on eligible purchases, get exclusive free gifts, and earn free shipping at Silver Key status, all on top of weekly member-only deals. Don't wait. Join MyLowe's Rewards for free today and start saving more. Lowe's, we help, you save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Hey, it's Bobby Bones with some exciting news. Open booking is here for the Top Shelf Country Cruise, setting sail February 2026 aboard the luxurious Celebrity Reflection. Spots are filling up fast, so book your stateroom today or sign up to become a lineup insider to receive the final lineup 48 hours prior to the public. Don't miss your chance to make February 2026 unforgettable. Visit TopShelfCountryCruise.com. That's TopShelfCountryCruise.com.
But have you ever seen them in the same room?
Who? Jeffrey Epstein and Jamal Khashoggi? They don't even look alike.
Yeah, exactly. Strange coincidence, right?
Was that they don't even look alike or that they're both dead?
Both. Interesting, is it not?
No, it's the least interesting thing I've ever heard.
Oh, hey, guys. You are just in time to see me win this game of Axis and Allies Napoleonic Edition. I rolled an 11, Tom. You lose 14 infantry and 3 cannon.
God, this game sucks.
You got time to play a game?
Yeah, he hates fun things.
Yeah, well, he's been trying to get me to throw out that script I was writing for the Etruscans episode for a long time, so he offered to play a game with me if I took a break from it.
God, are you sure the pieces aren't edible? Have you checked?
They're not edible.
This game sucks. Oh.
So he's playing the Napoleon game with you?
Well, it's Axis and Allies Napoleonic.
Okay, nobody
Edition,
cares.
so-
Boo.
what,
What was it your idea for him to wear the Napoleon outfit as part of this?
No, he just came into the studio in that.
It's not Napoleon. It's Captain Crunch. From the Crunchberry Wars. Read a book. Whatever.
Hello and welcome to Citation Needed, the podcast where we choose a subject, read a single article about it on Wikipedia, and pretend we're experts, because this is the internet, and that's how it works now. I'm No Illusions, and I'm going to be leading this expedition this week, but I'll need somebody to carry me once the frostbite sets in, so I'm excited to welcome the 3 men that I would most like to climb into like a tauntaun in that order: Cecil, Heath, and Tom.
Okay. Second, whatever.
I'm like a third row seating tauntaun.
Just fold and go.
Exactly.
Just fold and go.
I got lots of cup holders, if that's helpful.
I just know I'm not going to make any jokes here about stuffing my gash because I'm too classy
You
for
are
that.
way
Good
too
to know.
classy.
It's good to know that
Wouldn't
there's
go down
something
that
you're
road.
too classy for.
Just a bullet there.
And quick, before we get any further, I wanted to remind you that Eli's not here this week because he's at home taking care of his brand new, adorable little baby whose
Boo nerd.
entire future
Gross.
is almost entirely dependent on the continued viability of podcasting for a living during a Great Depression level economic downturn. So, you can pay for this show if you want to. If you'd like to learn
Jesus
how, be sure to
Christ.
stick around to the end of the show. And with that out of the way, tell us, Heath, what person, place, thing, concept, phenomenon, or event will we be talking about today?
We're going to be talking about Napoleon's invasion of Russia.
And Cecil, you seem pretty confident you can take on a topic this big. Are you ready to set off?
Underprepared and overconfident. It's how we roll on Citation Needed.
There we go.
Wait. Are we also invading Russia? I have my kids this weekend. I don't have time to invade Russia.
So,
You don't have time for an impromptu live stream, let alone invade Russia. Are you kidding me?
Who's got impromptu?
all right. So I guess depending on what angle you want to take with the intro, who was Napoleon? What is an invasion, or where is Russia?
Let's start with Napoleon. So Napoleon Bonaparte was the emperor of France and the only French emperor to get exiled to 2 different islands.
Well, there were only 3, and one of them reigned for 15 days.
Yeah,
but
okay. Okay. So I could certainly go on about how interesting this guy was and the changes that he brought about. I mean, the Napoleonic Code is the foundation of the French legal system, but this is Citation Needed, and And while Napoleon advocating his throne and getting exiled is pretty much on brand, the reason why all that took place is the real juicy morsel. This story is about how the most feared military leader of the time basically got rope-a-doped by a smaller army. The army let its shitty terrain and climate do the heavy lifting of kicking Napoleon's ass. It's about how you can really use someone's strengths against them.
Yeah, actually, Steven Seagal worked with the Russian army while he was a spy in Asia.
Jesus
There's a lot of Aikido stuff. It applies.
it was huge. It's like this would remain Russia's most lopsided victory until November of 2016. It lasted a while.
Too soon. Too soon.
Oh.
I love the idea of Steven
True
Seagal
story.
working from Napoleon's army, just runs at Russia with their arms sticking straight out. Flips him right over. It's amazing.
They're just flipping wildly in every direction.
So let's set the stage. Napoleon is doing pretty well as far as emperoring goes. He's kicked the shit out of Prussia and Austria, and he made a deal with the Spanish to secretly let him move troops through Spain to invade Portugal. The Portuguese royalty had to flee to Rio de Janeiro to escape him. Then, since he already had a bunch of troops in Spain, he decided to overthrow that country as well. In 1808, Napoleon appointed his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, as king of Spain, and that didn't sit too well with the Spanish, so they revolted.
Well, yeah, but like knowing the Spanish, it's entirely possible they had already scheduled that revolt before Napoleon took over.
Yeah.
It was going to happen on Tuesday anyway. But yeah.
Yeah, to be entirely fair, Cecil, to overthrow Spain, you just have to wait till like about 2:30 in the afternoon. You catch them while they're napping.
Yeah,
It's
it's pretty easy. Yeah.
That's the best. They have a nap time, a national nap time. I love that.
We're making fun of it, but it's seriously the greatest
greatest.
idea.
God.
Yeah.
I make fun because I'm jealous. I'm so
Right,
fucking
yeah.
jealous. Like
There's
ugly
a snack
jealous.
built in. It's fucking great.
So I want to take a second here to talk about the tactics that Napoleon used on the battlefield and in organizing his army and planning battles. Napoleon had an amazingly large army. He called it the Grand Army, and grand in French means fucking big. I'm a linguist like Steven Seagal. The first important thing he did is to make smaller corps out of the large army. These units could fight and command on their own because they had regiments from each combat arm. The corps had artillery, infantry, and cavalry and could act like a smaller army, allowing it to move faster and with autonomy.
Okay, so it sounds a lot like a Subway franchise with like a less deplorable spokesman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, every time you wrote Grande Armée, I saw Armiana Grande. Just that was like what my eyes saw.
This led to two other things that the Napoleonic armies did. The first is that they lived off the land instead of trying to maintain supply lines. Most armies, especially armies of this size, required pretty formidable supply lines to keep the troops fed. Well, Napoleon would live off the land as much as he could, thereby eliminating the lifeline tether that was often highly vulnerable. This tactic, as well as breaking his army up into smaller pieces, allowed him another advantage. His army was more mobile and quicker than other armies. This allowed him to maneuver and take advantage, and this quick speed allowed him to move past armies and take their supply lines, putting them in a rock and hard place situation.
It must have been awkward the first time both armies figured this out during the battle. They just like switch sides all of a sudden without realizing what happened. Hey, you guys don't have a supply line back here? We don't either. We're not getting it. I guess we're just regular fight.
Fucking marching in circles for a while like dogs sniffing each other's butts or something. All right, well, let's do a fucking fight.
I'm licking your butt. I'm licking your butt. Okay.
Napoleon was also a genius with mathematics and artillery. He used smaller, more mobile field guns instead of large cannons during battle. This again made his force more mobile and agile. He used his artillery for a cluster effect. He would point a lot of guns at one area, decimating it instead of pointing his cannon at the whole field and spreading it out. This helped with flanking and splitting his enemy apart, which were his preferred form of battlefield tactics.
Okay, I mean, that's good. I feel like they're stretching the term math genius there.
Okay.
Shoot all the cannons in the middle. I'm a genius. Like, that's nothing.
Yeah, no kidding. It's like, okay, our weapons are massive, slow, unwieldy, incredibly inaccurate. We should probably not treat them like enormous sniper rifles.
So let's get back to the Spanish.
in our story about the French invasion of Russia.
Okay. I never do that to you, by the way. I always listen.
No, that's true.
I always listen. I was sit cross-legged at your feet and listen to you go on and on and on about the Etruscans. So Napoleon goes in, takes over the country pretty much without bloodshed. And then, seeing it's in hand, he leaves. Well, when they revolted, they started a guerrilla war. And that does not play into the tactics that I described before. Napoleon's used to kicking the shit out of huge armies, not having his troops get their throats slit in the night. So the Spanish started winning battles against his armies, and he wasn't there. He eventually had enough, gathered 250,000 troops, and marched through Spain and took it back over. But the damage to his reputation was done. Countries in his forced alliance thought that he looked vulnerable.
I mean, I've seen the paintings. He was.
Yeah.
What a massive occupying force completely demoralized by a ragtag group of personally invested local militants. God, I'm glad we study history. I'd hate to have that egg on our face again. And again. And again.
Russia at this point has a peace treaty with France, but they're struggling financially. The system of trade that Napoleon institutes basically forbids all countries to trade with Britain. Russia disregards this order and trades with them. And there are some other territory disputes, but the real reason for the invasion is for one big tough guy to show the other big tough guy who's tougher. So on June 24th, 1812, 208 years ago today, Napoleon starts his invasion.
Okay. All right. Does anyone else just think we should have to say history out loud like a few times a year? Just recite it just in case we all hear it.
Just get a herald and a square to recite it start to finish every year. Yeah.
History. All right, voting for Trump.
Now, there's lots of different numbers for the size of the French forces. It varies between 500,000 to 600,000. I've seen even 750,000. This Grand Army, as it's called, it was stocked up to last about 30 days with provisions. And as I mentioned before, that's really not much of a problem when Napoleon conducted this kind of military activity in Central Europe. His forces could just live off the land. He's in for just a slight surprise in Russia, though.
Right. Well, yeah. You know how when we think of Russian president, you picture a fat guy? No?
Real chubby? No.
Also, such a dumb move going to Russia right away like that. Everybody knows you start with Australia. There's nothing behind it. and then you move over to Africa, South America. You stay low. The bridge. Brazil. There's a bridge.
An army this size is also an ecological disaster. I mean, you have a military force with a population the size of modern-day Atlanta marching across the land. The lack of clean water pretty much immediately creates a dysentery epidemic. In fact, it wasn't the only illness that would wreak havoc on the French forces. They had to contend with typhus, influenza, and diphtheria. Oh, and the elements and the lack of supplies, but we'll get there.
Yeah, no, to be clear, the guys who died from diphtheria right up front were the lucky ones in this story.
See, so when I read your essay the first time, I thought you said elephants instead of elements, and I got really excited for what was.
I'll do Hannibal next week for you, man.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right, I was pretty jazzed.
The only time we've ever had an elephant, we killed it on this show.
That's true. Yeah, right. I don't think they want to.
We murdered it. So.
And you know what? That's what they did to Hannibals, too.
We're not allowed to have elephants anymore.
It was that guy from Brooklyn. It was a Brooklyn. Whatever.
And now we can't talk about it, even though it's right in the room.
The Russian army.
Electrical technology.
The Russian army is led by Michael Andreas Barclay de Tolly. Now, in the things I've read, they've shortened his name down to Barclay, so that's how I'm going to refer to him. He's in charge of 100,000 to 130,000 Russian soldiers, so he's outnumbered about 4 to 5 to 1. And at a certain point, he's replaced by the Tsar, but really, he's the reason that Napoleon fails. That and overconfidence and underplanning. And the fact Napoleon is French. But Barclay is one of the reasons because he knew how to minimize his disadvantages and maximize his advantages. And the biggest advantage he had was that Russia is not terribly hospitable.
Well, yeah, right. But French rudeness didn't slow down the Nazis.
Not terribly hospitable. That is the nicest way to say shithole country yet devised, I think.
So the Grand Army starts this expedition in summer. So they're packed for hot weather. But they weren't prepared for how ungodly hot it was going to get. The heat on the trail was oppressive. They never give an exact temperature, but they use words like stifling and intense. The troops also weren't ready for the temperature swing between night and day. The temperature dropped like a rock when the sun went down, and the army wasn't prepared for that. And they also,
Does that not happen everywhere?
I guess.
When that sun goes down.
Is that just a Russian thing?
I mean, like the temperature swings, I guess, were really dramatic.
Yeah,
Not
they,
just
they have
20.
desert
Yeah. So it's a dramatic swing. They also weren't expecting the thunderstorms that soaked the road and turned it into muck because 500,000 people walked over it.
Cecil, it might at this point actually save us some trouble if you just narrowed this down to what they were expecting to encounter. It's just like, what if it rains? Shut up. You shut up, Pierre.
I saw the thing. It was 7 sunny smiley faces on the thing. We're fine.
I've got the What Do I Wear app, and it doesn't say anything. Okay.
Bring like a long sleeve tee.
It's a 10-day forecast. It's not even accurate.
I'm going to bring one hoodie. I don't want to pack 2,
Layers. I'm going to do layers.
I don't have room for a second pair of shoes. Anyway, so here's a quote from historian Richard Rhine. Quote, the thunderstorms of the 24th turned into other downpours, turning the tracks, some diarists claim there were no roads in Lithuania, into bottomless mires. Wagons sunk up to their hubs, horses dropped from exhaustion, men lost their boots.
Okay, so there was a bottom.
Yeah. Stalled wagons became obstacles that forced men around them and stopped supply wagons and artillery columns. Then came the sun, which would bake deep ruts into canyons of concrete where horses would break their legs and wagons their wheels, end quote.
Ugh. You're making war sound like a huge bummer, Cecil.
All right, well, I guess while we pause for a moment of remembrance for all the lost boots that somehow made it into that quote, we'll offer a little apropos of nothing.
It is I, Napoleon Bonaparte, Emperor of France and soon-to-be conqueror of, comment dit-on, la Russia.
Yeah, about that.
Who are you?
Oh, I'm you. I'm Napoleon, like you, but without the accent from the future.
The future. Okay. Tell me, what glories await me after my inevitable and swift defeat of Russia?
Well, you're right. So that's why I'm here. You might want to rethink a few things.
Really? Like what?
Okay, so you know how we're French and we basically invented food?
We invented it. We
like took over Spain and the tapas were just terrific.
we mixing it up. Little military conquest, little culinary tour. The ham in Spain is worth it just for the ham.
Yeah. So have you ever said these words? Hey, there's a great new Russian place that just opened up.
No, I guess I have not. Not sure what your point is.
Well, okay, so I'm just saying you're planning to feed your army on Russian land scraps. You might want to look at the menu.
My men are the best soldiers France has to offer. By God, we'll eat their frogs if we have to. We'll go without butter. We'll eat baguettes, even if they are, a day old and starting to get a little too crunchy. We're not afraid of a little hardship.
Okay,
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, right. You might want to pack an extra lunch. Is all I'm saying.
Lunch? I scoff at you. At me. I scoff at us. You're French. The French never surrender.
Lunch and a new motto.
What?
And you know what? Nothing. Just carry on. And we're back. When we last left off, the Earth had literally opened up to swallow the bottom half of Napoleon's army, and the Russians were heroically backing up some more. Cecil, why don't you pick up the thread from there?
Pretty much.
Really bad.
End story. No.
Yeah.
The Russian general knew he's outnumbered, and he also knew that he didn't have the quick artillery or the modern weapons of the Grand Army. So he did not rush up to face off against them. Instead, he retreated to Vilnius with an eye to continue his retreat to another town called Drissa. The entire way, they employed scorched earth techniques, burning down structures and chasing away livestock. They basically took away Napoleon's ability to thrive off the land.
When the French show up to burn our cities and fields, they're sure going to be in for a surprise, huh, guys?
Yeah, no shit.
Got him, right?
We're going to ruin our country to save it. Would you look at all this rain? This looks like a swamp now. Yeah. Drain this.
Why did we move to Lithuania? Should we just let him have it?
Napoleon thought he'd catch the army at Vilnius and he'd have one quick, decisive battle. And if he beat the Russians bad enough, then they would sue for peace, allowing him to get the spoils of war and finish the campaign quickly. His march there through the countryside of Lithuania was not pleasant.
Yeah, still true today.
Yeah, right.
So, Lithuania,
The
not on
country,
your bucket list.
the country was inhospitable, marshy, and sparsely populated.
That tracks.
Yeah.
Still not on your bucket list. Don't even need to look at it.
So when his troops arrived in Vilnius, they were tired, hungry, and road weary.
Guys, what are they even trading with Britain? Like cold mud? Let's just let this happen. I don't understand what we're even talking about.
Napoleon arrives in Vilnius on June 28th, and it's deserted. So he sets up a depot for supplies. But while the major force of Russians departs to Drissa, another contingent heads in the other direction. This smaller force stays behind and basically disrupts Napoleon's supply lines, using his own tactic against him. When Napoleon would at times send forces after each of these armies, and when he dedicated troops to them, they would attack and harry in the other direction.
Right, like it's like Monkey in the Middle, but with death.
Yeah, right.
Played some very low stakes Monkey in the Middle. No, just saying.
Hey, dude,
Played that
I had
like
a big
men.
brother. No, the fuck I didn't.
So while Barclay was effective, depriving Napoleon of any supplies and encouraging him to exhaust and starve his troops, he was not popular. As you can imagine, the brave Sir Robin tactics he was employing were not going over well with the Russian nobility. All of whom thought he was doing an absolute shit job, and even though they were outnumbered, they should fight like men head on. Barclay, after this is all over, will be known as a hero by a lot of Russians, but when it's happening, everyone was begging the Tsar to replace him.
Okay, what's happening that they care so much? Like French people making fun of the Russians on Twitter? Yeah, right. While they're playing FIFA, they're getting pwned in the chat box? What?
Barclay's forces retreat to Drissa by July 10th. He leaves a rear guard dangling.
Oh, I hate that. It's so gross. Every time. Linty toilet paper. Okay. All right.
Got to get the Toto. That stops that. Trying to get Napoleon to take the bait and follow him. He thinks Drissa is a good place to make a stand, but Napoleon's not stupid, and he can see that Barclay's trying to set the hook, so he ignores Barclay, and he heads towards Moscow. Now, this whole time, his troops are starving. People are literally keeling over on the side of the trail from a forced march.
Okay, we need you to march until you're half dead, but remember, you're going to have to march back when we're done. So no more than half. Half dead is that's it.
The crazy thing is that Napoleon's so focused on victory that he ignores the fact that his supply chain is literally doing its job. They're placing within a few miles of the route tons of food for his troops, but he ignores it, or it doesn't occur to him, or he's so focused on moving forward he doesn't want to slow up. Whatever the reason, he neglects the food and his troops die because of it.
Wow.
Just like, climb on this giant pallet of canned food so you can see the enemy. But sir, I'm starving. I will give you a boost then. You know, the fuck, man.
Now, while his troops are dying from starvation, there is enough grazing land for the horses, but the horses are actually eating types of grass they're not accustomed to eating, so they're getting digestion issues. And digestion issues for a horse are a little complicated. But they have like this real easy fix. You see, you stick your whole arm up to the shoulder in the horse's ass and you pull out the blockage.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
What?
whole arm up to the shoulder, horse's ass, pull out the blockage.
Is it always the length of your arm exactly where the blockage is?
I guess it's just, but if you have a short arm, what do? Get a guy with a longer arm over here?
I would
No, because
assume.
your horse is going to be matched to the length of your legs. This makes sense, guys. This makes sense.
So this is the one time my fucking T-Rex arms would come in handy. I'd be like, sorry guys, I'm not your guy.
Heath,
I'm not your guy. I can't reach in there.
Again. I need you to reach something for me, Heath. I need you to reach something. Yeah.
Might be embarrassing that I can't get the bowls down from the top shelf, but at least I have to stick my arm up this horse's ass. So.
Use your leg.
So I'm not sure how tight a fit it is, but after a few times, it was probably pretty Appaloosa. So it just goes right in. Appaloosa's a kind of horse audience.
Yes, it is.
Grabbing that sea biscuit. So,
oh, your hands are so cold.
but here's the thing. Somebody had to figure that out for the first time.
Right?
Somebody was like, oh, the horses are having digestion problems. All right, I'm going to try something. I think I got a plan.
I've tried this on like 8 animals. It hasn't worked yet, but damn it, it's going to work eventually. Meanwhile, his buddy's like, you know what, Pierre? I'm fine marching behind a farty horse now that I think about it.
Yeah, sticking your hand up its ass is your solution when we were still in France. That's your solution a lot. That's all I'm saying. That's your...
Yeah, big arm Steve.
Yeah. Just do it. Barclay sees that Napoleon is heading in a different direction. Napoleon is heading to a town called Smolensk. So Barclay heads there first and sets up some fortifications. The orders from above are basically begging Barclay to engage. So he digs in and he waits. But when Napoleon does show up, Barclay fights for a bit, weathers an artillery barrage, kills about 5,000 charging Frenchmen, and then issues a controlled retreat. He abandoned the city, which the French had already burned to the ground with an artillery barrage, and he crossed the river, destroying the bridges so the French couldn't easily follow. The losses for this battle range, but authors put them as high as 20,000 for each side.
God damn. And he's just like, man, I can't wait to defeat those Russians. And all these burnt out husks full of starving villagers will become French burnt out husks full of starving villagers, and we will know the sweet taste of victory.
And then we wait? I don't know. I don't get the end game of this.
Who's winning now?
Oh, we trade mud with Britain. We trade mud with
That's
Britain.
right. Yeah. Back to square one, guys. Napoleon stops in Smolensk. He holds a meeting with his generals to talk about the plan. Almost all of them want to wait there. The battle took place in mid-August, so they figured that they would wait for the supplies to catch up to them, resupply, restock, dig in for the long Russian winter, and resume the invasion in the spring. Napoleon decides instead that he wants to pursue the Russians and abandon Smolensk, heading for Moscow.
I love that the generals are like, I kind of want to take a gap year. I don't know.
That's so true, right? They want to be red-shirted or whatever.
Maybe backpack around Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia. Backpack around Lithuania.
What could go wrong when like a major leader doesn't listen to his generals?
Yeah. Well, it's actually one general. I didn't put this in, but one Polish general wanted to finish so he could become like some kind of baron or king of some area. And so he was really pushing Napoleon, and I guess he had his ear and he twisted it enough and I think Napoleon was just it was one Polish guy really who sort of twisted it all up. Now, until this point, there's lots of little battles that took place, and I've skipped over them. I mean, I call them little battles, but these are skirmishes where one side loses under 10,000 men, 6,000 here, 3,000 there. But at Borodino, the armies would clash in their full might.
Wow, dude, I have not heard such a cavalier dismissal of thousands of deaths since Kemp announced Georgia's timeline of reopening, honestly.
Since Georgia's bowling schedule got released.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
But to be entirely fair, Noah, like Russia losing 10,000 lives is like, it's not even noteworthy. It's like, if this is like a who cares less about Russian lives contest between the Russians and anyone ever in all of history, Russia's winning that contest.
So true, man.
They've won so many of those contests.
God.
Yeah, that's their solution.
Yeah. Now, I said earlier the full might of the armies, and I say full might, but at Borodino, Napoleon had already lost 120,000 troops to hunger, disease, and conflict. So his force at this point is much smaller than when he entered Russia. Also, before the battle, the Tsar replaced Barclay with another general, Mikhail Kutuzov. Kutuzov basically does the same thing Barclay does, fortifies his position, and waits for Napoleon to march in. At the Battle of Borodino, there's a lot of back and forth. I could go into the tactics, but there's placing of troops and countering, charging and dying.
So you are going to go into the tactics.
A little bit, not much. I was going to talk about how they use this one line of trees. Anyway. So
what happens with the line of trees?
I don't want to get into. I don't want to get into it. I don't want to get into it. Okay.
Was Macbeth involved?
No, that's
90
degrees.
Fine.
Yeah, no.
Exactly 90?
Used a stream too to make sure that they could. Anyway, so the initial setup by the Russians tried to lure Napoleon to have him perform a tactic that he liked to employ and thus fall into a trap, but Napoleon avoids it. Napoleon and Kutuzov also guessed wrong about where the other would place their troops, cavalry and artillery.
They're just like, okay, you guys are nowhere near the big red X. Neither are you. Okay, we're both kind of cheating.
They're both standing there, and two safes fall right next to him, directly next to him. Yeah. At the end of the day, there were 70,000, and this is one day, 70,000 casualties for both sides. Wow. It was the bloodiest day in the Napoleonic Wars.
And you know, the funny thing about 70,000 casualties in a single day is the kind of sentence opening that it's my job to finish. This turned into a weird fucking job, Cecil. You didn't say it would be like this.
Yeah. This job started with the Holodomor. I just want you to remind you of that. Now, the Russians lost more troops, but since they were on Russian soil, it would take a lot more casualties for them to technically lose. They could replenish a lot easier than the French.
Okay, but to be clear, it's not replenish their supplies, just, replenish their Russians that they were working on.
At one point in this battle, historians think that Napoleon could have won if he deployed his reserve troops, but he didn't, thinking he could win the battle without them. Kutuzov, realizing that he's just going to lose more troops, does what Barclay did, and he calls for a retreat to Moscow, promising his troops and his staff that they can collect more soldiers and guard Moscow.
Okay, reserve troops are just standing there being like, well, we're not called in. Fuck you.
They were like his personal guard.
What a reserve troop.
They're like alternate jurors. They just, they were like, I'm a little racist. They're like,
That's
I know. They were his personal guard, and I think he didn't send them because he thought he had the battle in hand, and he didn't, and he probably could have won because of it. At least that's what.
Yeah, okay. They're not just standing there being like, I'm on my 15 still.
They weren't doing anything. Not. I mean, they were protecting him, I guess, technically. But anyway. The Russians retreat, but they leave a rear guard so fierce that the French can't actually advance to follow the fleeing army for 2 full days. The Russians that were left there were basically sacrificed, but they prevented the entire army from being overrun. Moscow, at this point, pretty much abandoned the city, and the Russian plans for defending it really never materialized, and they march right past it.
Okay, I mean, I know that they're winning and all, and that they do win, but it still feels like the fucking Russians are cheating.
Yeah.
Right. It's like winning at risk by pondering over your next move until I have to go home. Right.
This actually, to me, this feels like beating yourself up first to save your bully.
It does. It really does. Takes Napoleon 5 days to get to the gates of Moscow, and he finds it burning and abandoned. And he, of course, is disappointed, thinking that he's
my job.
Yeah. Well, he's thinking he's either going to crush the remaining forces there or at least receive an unconditional surrender, and he doesn't get either. What is also customary is that the city leaders would basically feed and house the invading troops in exchange for sparing the city. Well, no one's there with a hot plate of hors d'oeuvres and a warm towel, and Napoleon's super pissed, man.
Okay, this is just plain rude. There's nobody to plunder from. I don't even want to plunder now. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a fire in Moscow that night. It could actually be its own citation needed. And it's not certain how it starts. It rages for a few days until the entire city is pretty much ash. The capital, Russia at the time, St. Petersburg, and even though the city is called the second capital, it's basically worth about $350. So Napoleon did not receive a lengthy surrender agreement from the Tsar. Instead, he looked around at his zero assets, knowing he couldn't push forward anymore, and he left for home. It's not that easy just picking up and leaving Russia. It's coming up on winter. The troops at this point are starving. The road is totally burnt. And if you think the Russians were just going to let him walk away, think again. They basically harass and harry the army the entire march. The horses have nothing to eat, and they're either left to die or they're eaten for food. And this means all the cavalrymen just got demoted to infantry, and all those heavy cannons are just left behind. Napoleon came to Russia with 500,000 men, and he left with, legend has it, 22,000 men.
Wow.
Now there may have been as many as 100,000 prisoners of war, so it isn't as bad as it sounds, but it's still pretty fucking bad.
Oh, no, I'm sure the fucking Russian war prisoners made it out just fine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Somehow in this thing, the real winners were like the guys who pooped themselves to death in the first 6 hours of the
absolutely.
campaign.
I worked
Absolutely,
ahead of
man.
time. The fucking diphtheria guys they knew how to get it done.
Yeah, man.
God damn.
Napoleon's
I guess
armies.
the horses won, really.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Yeah, they got
At least they
goosed
got
and then they
fisted,
died. Yeah, they got fisted and they died. Napoleon's army's never the same after that. I mean, he had to rebuild the whole thing, and he did a pretty good job getting it back up to about 400,000 men. But a lot of his veterans were gone, and he had lost a tremendous amount of horses and cannon in Russia. It was pretty obvious that he could be beaten, and in the next few years, he would be beaten a few times until he finally loses it all and gets exiled to that first island. I think this story is such a great tale of overconfidence, incompetence, and French failure. It's just a shame Eli missed it, you know? I mean, it's all up his alley. All up your alley.
Shitting yourself to death.
Yeah, it's all up there. It's there.
Fisting horses. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So if you had to summarize what you learned in one sentence, what would it be?
As a Napoleonic era soldier, sticking your entire arm up a horse's ass is probably the best thing that happened on your trip to Russia.
Oh, it's so warm. It's so warm in here, guys.
At least there wasn't elephants
Yeah,
like Combat
exactly,
Yeah, they just had to
Why
send
is that
the short
worse?
guy all the
Describe
way
why
in.
that's worse.
Hold my ankles. Yeah.
We got to make a chain. It's actually a lot. It's more.
When I tug on the rope 3 times, I've got the blockage. Pull me out of here.
Okay, we gotta. This isn't working. It's like shooting pool with a rope. We gotta tie a board to ourselves.
All right, and are you ready for the quiz, sir?
Oh, God, nothing up my sleeve, let me tell you.
All right, Cecil. Which of the following is the best ass porn about the French army shoving their arms inside of horses?
Okay, taking notes.
Heath, I'm
taking
so
notes.
glad you were here. This is my favorite part of everything. Thank you so much for going.
All right, which is the best ass porn? A, black booty. B,
It's always a good choice, actually.
from Russia with glove. C, the Derby Sanchez.
Oh, God.
D, 2 Phillies, 1 cup. Or E, deep disimpact.
Oh, gosh. I gotta go with secret answer F, all of the above. They're all amazing. There's no best. You cannot rank one better than the other.
That is absolutely correct, Cecil.
Yeah, so good. So good.
All right, Cecil. Napoleon probably should have known that Russia would never yield to a foreign power. What clues to Russian fortitude might have tipped him off?
Oh, God.
A, Russians drink vodka like hikers sipping a Camelback. B, when a meteor blew up the sky in Russia, many of the locals stood up to fight it. C, it is a common street scam in Russia to purposely throw yourself in front of a car and then either sue or fight the driver. That is after first fighting the car.
That's how Zangief got his start in Street
Or
Fighter.
D, Russian sports all seem to involve enormously stoic men taking massive amounts of punishment in extreme competitions to see who drops first. This is not a war strategy. This is recreation in Russia. The Russians actually called the Napoleonic War the Big French Tickle Fight.
Again, you're trying to throw me off. You wanted me to pick one, but it's not. It's all of the above. It's E, all of the above.
It is. He probably should have
Their
known
Olympic
better.
team is called Collection of Countries, most recently. Something like that.
Have you ever seen the Russian slap fighting?
Oh, yeah.
They just
Yeah,
stand in front
yeah.
of each other and just slap each other until someone doesn't want to get slapped anymore.
Or they crumple because they knock each other out
Each
doing
other out
it.
from slapping.
All right. So I got one that can stump you here, Cecil. If Eli had been on this episode, how would he have avoided the work of actually writing one of these question bits for the end? A, do that hilarious, he's just so bad at puns shtick again.
Classic.
B, done a weird meta thing that ignores the show's subject matter entirely and instead relies on the fictitious personas we've crafted for the purposes of this program. C, that is not what I'm doing right now. That's what you're doing right now. I'm doing something hard and clever.
Do a voice.
Or D, have a kid.
Gross.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the grossest answer. D, have a kid. That's the most disgusting thing that he could have done.
It's kind of obvious because that's what he did. All right, well, it looks like nobody was able to stump you this week. So, Cecil, you won the episode. You get to choose the host next week. That is a perfectly sensible dynamic that ties each episode together wonderfully. Who would you like to ask us to be next
How
week?
are people going to listen to this next week? This totally ruins the system. I can't listen next week.
I'm going to choose Tom to go
What?
next
No.
week. It's your perfectly sane system.
All right,
perfectly
awesome.
sane.
Well, for Cecil and Heath, Tom, and to a lesser extent, Eli, I'm No Illusions. Thanking you for hanging out with us today. We'll be back next week, and by then, Tom will be an expert on something else. Between now and then, you can hear more from Tom and Cecil on cognitive dissonance and the sexiest crab species subreddit. You can hear more from Heath and me on the Scathing Atheist, God-Awful Movies, the Skeptocrat, D&D Minus, and probably some other fucking show by now, too. And if you'd like to help keep this show going, you can make a per-episode donation at patreon.com/citationpod or leave a 5-star review anywhere you can. If you want to get in touch with us, check out past episodes, connect with us on social media, or check the show notes. Be sure to check out citationpod.com.
Get this. Adults with financial literacy skills have 82% more wealth than those who don't. From swimming lessons to piano classes, us parents invest in so many things to enrich our kids' lives. But are we investing in their future financial success? With Greenlight, you can teach your kids financial literacy skills like earning, saving, and investing. And this investment costs less than that after-school treat. Start prioritizing their financial education and future today with a risk-free trial at greenlight.com/get-started. That's GREENLIGHT.com/get-started.